I find it disgusting that more people aren't aware of this lawsuit that's going on right now, so I'm going to do you all a favor and take you by the hand and show you the light. I'm no hero, okay, but please pat me on the back for the bravery anyway. Right now, there is a $3 billion lawsuit going on that names some of the biggest celebrities in the world. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Michael Jordan, and even Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit, many of you probably raised an eyebrow to because he's been dead for well over 10 years now, and he has just been named in a $3 billion lawsuit for conspiracy to kidnap a woman and her children. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the story of Chris Benoit. He was a damn near household name in the wrestling scene, and he ended up killing his family and killing himself. It's a horrific, tragic story. And he's been dead for a long time now. He has been decaying in the ground for a while. And the children here that are talked about in the lawsuit, from everything I've read, were not alive when Chris Benoit still inhabited this corporeal dimension. Which would mean that post-mortem, from beyond the grave, Chris Benoit's spirit would have had to been conspiring with this massive Illuminati network here to commit this kidnapping crime. Which is a bold claim. This is a lawsuit that comes from a former wrestler named Raka Khan, who alleges that there was this massive conspiracy to kidnap her and her children, and she is seeking $3 billion and named not only a ton of celebrities like individuals and pretty much every wrestler that has ever breathed over the last 100 years. I wouldn't be surprised to find Andre the Giant buried somewhere in the list of culprits, but she is also naming entire companies like Home Depot. I shit you not. Home Depot is listed as part of this conspiracy to kidnap her and her children. It is outrageous. Now, of course, I don't want to rule out the possibility that Home Depot has a seat at the New World Order, and the first order of business was to kidnap her and her children, but with the amount of people and companies listed here, it seems unrealistic, because like I said, it wasn't just Home Depot either. Bank of America was listed, the FBI, the entire FBI. There's all these companies apparently had skin in the game, and they're all listed now in this $3 billion lawsuit. Honestly, by the end of reading this list, I was half expecting to see my favorite breakfast restaurant listed here, which is just a mom and pop local restaurant, and I thought, you know what, everyone's guilty out here. But yeah, it's pretty outrageous, and I've done a bit of research now on Raka Khan, and she's unfortunately had a lot of bad things happen to her post-wrestling career, as well as even during her wrestling career. For example, she dated Kurt Angle for a while, and there was 2009 incident where like abuse was alleged, but then it was later kind of dropped. But it was very messy, very muddy and fishy, but overall a lot has happened to her throughout her life. And in 2019, she even landed herself on the most wanted list for El Paso. It's a really wild web, and the lawsuit is pretty concerning, honestly. I went over it all on stream, so I'll just play those clips for you to give you a deeper insight into all of it. Yeah, I'll look up the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson lawsuit. Here. Someone mentioned that earlier, I forgot to look it up. It was apparently named in a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit from a former WWE wrestler. Holy shit, it's a kidnapping lawsuit. Oh, that's right, live action Moana. Maybe he's being sued because of how horrible that fucking idea is. They're kidnapping the audience's patience. The FBI is named in the lawsuit. Wow, that's awfully ambitious. Her complaint, most of which is made up of those being sued, alleges that those named worked together in a conspiracy to kidnap her and her children. Some other names in the lawsuit are the State of Texas, the El Paso Child Protective Services, the Las Cruces, New Mexico Police Department, the NYPD, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, New York ACS, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Shirley Police Department, Sigma Phi Epsilon, Suffolk County, New York, the Bank of America, Home Depot, and even who are her children? What? Why would all of these people work together to kidnap her children? Are they like Super Saiyans? Fuck, Jesus Christ. Home Depot of all things. How did they get tossed into the mega mix? The kidnapping aisle? What happened? Apparently it's proceeded in court. That's what it said at the start. It's making waves in court, or making progress in court. Still has a bench warrant out for her after not appearing at a criminal trial in December 2022 in Texas, where she was to face charges of interference with child custody and aggravated kidnapping facilitate. Aggravated kidnapping facilitate. Why does that sound so grammatically incorrect? She paid the court fees, which allowed the case to move forward, but no one's been served yet. And she is currently on their wanted list. And back in 2019 was placed as the most wanted fugitive list for child custody charges by El Paso. So this sounds like very serious mental illness here. What the fuck? Oh my god, Michael Jordan's named in it too. How deep does the web go? Or how deep does the rabbit hole go? If I'm reading this right, The Rock, The Miz, Chris Benoit, Mick Foley, and others conspired to kidnap Raka Khan and her children. Chris Benoit has been dead for fucking 2 decades almost. So the ghost of Chris Benoit conspired to steal her and her children? When did she allege that this happened, this conspiracy? This is so wacky. Holy fuck. Home Depot trying to be the next Wayfair. Yeah, I guess so. This is the next storyline for the WWE. Oh man, fuck, if only the NWL could get in on this action, we'd use this lawsuit for one of our storylines in a heartbeat. This would be huge for us. But I mean, yeah, this is fucking serious delusion. Especially because she's paying a ton of money for this, clearly. She paid all of the fees in order to push this through the court system, apparently. That's a big chunk of change right down the shitter. Oh, wait, you're right. Wait, Billy Corgan is also named in here. Did you just start naming everyone in the wrestling industry from, like, all promos everywhere? Am I in here? Is the MWL named in this? Fucking Dow Jones listed on this, lawsuit? I can't find the lawsuit, but we got some super sleuths on Twitter that were immediately able to point out some very shady business of this lawsuit, which is shocking. I mean, everything here seems watertight and sane, but they noticed that her child, that I assume she is referring to a potential kidnapping victim of this massive Illuminati conspiracy kidnapping case, was 4 years old in 2019. So that would mean Chris Benoit had already been dead and buried and literally a fucking skeleton in a coffin at this point. So when she was placed on the most wanted fugitives list, her child was 4, and that was in 2019. So Chris Benoit, he must have been like haunting the family, plotting this one. You're forgetting about potential time traveling shenanigans. I didn't even stop to consider time dilation. You're not wrong. How much is she asking for in damages? $3 billion. Yeah, you must have missed the most important part. Thanks to Reese Nigel. You think they'll settle? Brother, if a single person listed in this lawsuit even gives this a moment of thought, I would be shocked. No, they're not going to settle for anything. Though, if they want to, they can do it in the squared circle of the Moist Wrestling League. We'll have ourselves our first lawsuit match. We should start suing people like this as a form of networking. Not wrong, Aaron. This actually might be the play. How's Michael Jordan involved if it's all wrestlers? Because it's not all wrestlers. Brother, the FBI and Home Depot are listed here, and Bank of America. It's just she also listed every wrestler ever as well. Legal Eagle on YouTube says she has a legit lawsuit. I already know, I'm just being lied to. Legal Eagle did not just cover this lawsuit. There is a 0% chance. But I'll look it up anyway. I don't know why I'm doing this. Hey! Shocking. Nothing from Legal Eagle here. What the fuck did I just read here? Home Depot was an amazing street fight wrestler. His Fampus top rope 2x4 smash. What the fuck? I feel like I know what you were going for, but everything went wrong in the sentence and made it much better. I don't know what a fampus is, but fuck yeah. Won't this mess up The Rock's work with Disney? No, man. I don't think it will. I mean, hey, I'd actually love to be wrong about that. A live-action Moana is criminal. The movie's not even 10 years old. So if it does impede on that, then this lawsuit was worth it. But there's a 0% chance. Google is being sued for $2.5 decillion. That is probably a number you didn't even think existed. Like, that's more than a gazillion dollars. That's more than a more billion dollars. Like, this is an unfathomable number they are being sued for by Russia. To help put it in perspective, here's Decillion compared to others that you've heard before, such as 1,000, million, billion, or even trillion. And you can see trillion's not even halfway there. It doesn't even make a dent. It's estimated that the entire global GDP is 100 trillion, which is like 0.0000001% of what Google is being sued for by Russia. To put it in even more simple terms, 2.5 decillion is almost as many pounds as your mother weighs. It is crazy what they are trying to achieve with this lawsuit here. Shooting for the stars doesn't even cover it. You couldn't sell the Earth for $2.5 decillion to aliens. It's not even worth that much. If you took every dollar, every form of currency ever made throughout the history of our species, it wouldn't even come close to 1 decillion. I cannot stress enough just how absurd this number is. Like, Dr. Evil wouldn't even go for this. This is so far into the realm of lunacy that I don't think there's a single made-up villain who would even try this. At this point, it'd be like a fucking Phineas and Ferb character suing for infinity money. The lawsuit is over YouTube banning Russian media networks. Like, they banned a ton of Russian accounts and accounts associated with, like, the Kremlin and all of that. And the fine arises from Google's failure to comply with previous court orders mandating the reinstatement of these Russian media accounts on YouTube. The court warned Google that non-compliance would lead to compounding fines with no ceiling on the amount, starting at 100,000 rubles daily, and the fines doubling every week until the channels are restored. This is what it feels like to play Magic the Gathering with someone doing doubling season token shenanigans. Like, this is just fucking stupid. The fines doubling every week? It's like a RuneScape scam. What the fuck? What in tarnation? So, fundamentally, YouTube had banned a lot of Russian media accounts and accounts associated with the Kremlin and all of that. And Google has repeatedly cited sanctions compliance as the justification for suspending content from the channels, including high-profile networks like Tsargrad TV and RIA Fan. They argued that the media entities involved were under U.S. sanctions imposed in response to Russia's geopolitical actions since 2014. So fundamentally, Google is saying, hey, we had to do this because of these issues and these sanctions. Then in 2022, following the invasion of Ukraine, the subsidiary of Google that was operating in the region declared bankruptcy, and Moscow had seized more than 100 million from the entity. According to The Telegraph, Google said Russia handed the assets to sanctioned TV channels including Tsargrad, and that they seized more than 100 million of Google Russia's assets, even though the amount purportedly due under the judgment at the time was less than 12.5 million. So this has just been a back and forth butt fucking for quite some time now between Russia and Google. Now, Google in its latest earnings statement said, "We do not believe these ongoing legal matters will have a material adverse effect." To me, that sounds like they're saying, there's a lot of words here and we're not reading them. They're just going to ignore it. They're not even going to play ball with it for even a second. They're not entertaining the idea of a $2.5 decillion fine. They're just plugging their ears to it. Google has almost entirely ceased operations in Russia already. Like, they've almost fully pulled out from what I can tell. So it seems like they're just going to pretend that, you know, the tooth fairy's not real here and just not think about it. So this has been an ongoing battle here between Russia and Google, and this is just the most recent development in the anime. I don't think there's a single world where anyone actually looks at that number and takes it seriously. 2.5 decillion is comically large. There's not even that much sand on the planet. There are 7.5 sextillion grains of sand, and that doesn't even make a dent into 1 decillion. There is nothing on this planet that exists in that quantity, except maybe atoms. I think atoms is like 10 to the power of 50. Now, I can't imagine they're actually stupid enough to think that Google is somehow going to poop this shit out, 2.5 decillion anythings at all. That's impossible. I think this is just like a desperate Hail Mary to get some kind of money from it, like some kind of big fine from all of this. So they're just letting this number be as outrageous as possible. And they are trying to enforce these fines in other regions like South Africa, where they're trying to kind of come at Google from multiple angles, and then Google has been, in response, filing lawsuits to keep everything like localized to Russia. So it's been pretty messy. It has definitely been an interesting journey trying to get caught up on the lore of Google versus Russia. And I just had to dive in with both nuts here because 2.5 decillion, I had never even heard of the word decillion before. I thought that was just a made-up term. And it's not. It's so crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. Of course, I'm just a clueless Neanderthal, so I have no idea if this lawsuit has any real meat behind it, if it holds water at all. I didn't pass the bar, I'm not a lawyer. But from my uneducated perspective, it just sounds so fucking stupid. To be coming at Google for this amount of money over YouTube accounts being banned, I think is ridiculous. It's not like those YouTube accounts were going to generate anywhere near that level of money. Realistically, all of the YouTube accounts put together probably wouldn't have generated anything even close to $100 million, even if they were operational for 100 years. Like, I just don't understand where this number's even coming from. Like, I understand it's like the compounding fines where it doubles every week, but it's just made up, pulled out of their ass arbitrary nonsense. Like, can any YouTuber do that? Like, oh, my YouTube account was unjustly terminated. Google owes me $1,000 per day that it stays down, and it's going to double every week. Well, based on what? Why? That's just a classic because I said so moment right there. I just don't see where they're getting this from. Like, why would it be doubling every week? Who made that rule? What referee came in there and threw the flag on the play saying that it needs to be doubled every week that they don't comply? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Those accounts were never going to generate anywhere near that level of money for a daily fine that would double every week. That's just, that would never happen. So how the fuck can they possibly expect Google or any, like, reasonable judge to look at that and be like, oh no, that sounds about right? Again, I'm pretty sure it's just to be, like, intimidating and scary to settle for some kind of payment out of court, perhaps. But to me, this just doesn't seem to be, like, a lawsuit with a ton of punch behind it. Like, it really just doesn't seem like they have the strongest case to be coming at them for this amount of money. Now, it's worth mentioning, just like the end of a Marvel movie, it will return. This ticking time bomb hasn't stopped. It's still going, and it is still actively doubling. So it's 2.5 decillion now, but this might be the cheapest it'll ever be because in a month from now, a year from now, we may be looking at new numbers that are going to need to be invented to figure out how much Russia is trying to hit Google for. Anyway, though, I just had to talk about it a little bit because it was so crazy, and I was diving into it pretty deep this afternoon. That's really about it. So, yeah. I've been more into lawsuits than Saul Goodman recently. I've become such a huge lawsuit enthusiast over the last, 6 or so months. Not me, issuing lawsuits, I've still never done that, though with all the stories I've read, that could be a very interesting branch of content, just frivolously filing lawsuits to see how it goes, I guess. Because apparently no one ever gets punished for doing that. Best example is the classic, silly Billy Mitchell, the video game player of the century who files a new lawsuit anytime someone makes a joke about him being a cheater. And I'm not using the word allegedly, Billy. You are a scumbag cheater, and I hope you lose all of your ongoing lawsuits, brother. But anyway, enough bravado here and lat spreading on Billy Mitchell, celebrating every single L that he keeps taking, and will most likely continue to keep taking. Let's focus on what I want to talk about. I have really enjoyed diving into the most outrageous, most unhinged lawsuits imaginable. And last night, I found the magnum opus. This is the craziest lawsuit I've ever even been made aware of. There was a lawsuit I covered a couple years ago where there was a Twitch viewer who was suing Twitch because they were showing him female streamers and he couldn't stop jerking off, so he was suing for like millions of dollars worth of damages, claiming like it's immoral that Twitch would have these, female streamers doing suggestive things and it forces him to masturbate or whatever. And that, to me, for a while, was probably one of the most entertainingly awful lawsuits I'd read about. But what I read last night actually beats it. A man in Australia filed a lawsuit against a hospital for $1 billion Australian dollars, which converts to about 643 million freedom bucks. And the reason he was suing this hospital is because he watched his wife give birth. He believed that what he had witnessed there was basically a war crime, like a violation of his human rights and a complete failure on that hospital's duty of care to him to make sure that he didn't see that. He was upset because the hospital not only allowed him to watch his wife's birth via C-section, but also encouraged it. Which to me doesn't sound like anything weird from the hospital. I mean, they call it the miracle of childbirth for a reason. Plus, if he wasn't allowed to watch it, I feel like that would be a huge problem. Being denied access to your wife during like the most important moment of your relationship, I imagine would actually be grounds for a lawsuit. Most people, I would imagine, would want to be there with their partner to comfort and be able to take part in the gift of life, I guess. But this guy believed that they should have shielded his eyes and plugged his ears or something, and the fact that they didn't caused him psychotic illness. And he believes he's entitled to at least $1 billion Australian dollars in damages. Did you hear about the man suing a hospital for $642 million after watching his wife's C-section and said it gave him a psychotic illness? You've got my attention. You undersold this. He's actually suing the hospital for $643 million. Man tries to sue a hospital for $643 million after he was encouraged to watch his wife's C-section. A man in Australia accused a hospital in Melbourne of causing him to develop a psychotic illness after he watched his wife undergo a cesarean section. Interesting. 643 million clams. Anil Coppola tried to sue the Royal Women's Hospital for letting him watch his wife's birth via C-section in 2018. He unsuccessfully sought 1 billion Australian dollars, which is 643 million. A judgment on the lawsuit filed in the Supreme Court of Victoria in Melbourne last week shows. How could this have not worked? What went wrong? Mr. Coppola's wife that day had a healthy baby delivered by cesarean section. Mr. Coppola alleges that he was encouraged or permitted to observe the delivery, that in the course of doing so he saw his wife's internal organs and blood, and that the experience caused the onset of a psychotic illness. He says the hospital breached the duty of care it owed to him and is liable to pay him damages. The hospital admits that it owed to him a duty of care, but denied that it breached it and does not accept that he suffered any injury. In his amended statement of the claim on October 22nd, Mr. Coppola, who is self-represented, that sounds about right. That tracks. Assessed his damages for psychological injury at $1 billion. Isn't this so cringe? The human body is so cringe that C-sections are pretty common because we're not developed enough, we haven't evolved enough to make birthing efficient. So oftentimes they have to deliver the baby through the stomach. Evolution just is... It's got to catch up. We've got to redefine the meta. Birthing should be like the most efficient thing humans are good at. It's like the whole purpose of being an organism. To reproduce. I was just talking to my mom about that. That is an interesting conversation to have with your mom, but yeah, it is a fascinating anomaly why we haven't evolved to be better at it. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 32.1% of all baby deliveries in the U.S. in 2021 were cesarean section. Wow. Coppola filed the lawsuit several years after the operation, saying it caused the onset of a psychotic illness that led to a breakdown of his marriage. Yeah, that was the reason. The reason me and my wife broke up is because I had to watch her get a C-section and I've never been the same. I couldn't look at her the same way. She grossed me out. It was so fucking yucky. I hated her for it. And I hated the hospital for making me see her like that. I've seen her inside and out. Yeah, stared into the abyss. Coppola chose to represent himself in court where Justice James Gorton dismissed the suit and deemed the claim an abuse of process. I would agree with that. Did he give him like a big speech like, listen, goofball, this is ridiculous. Go home. Get out of my court. If men could birth, would you rather birth an NFL football out of your brown eye or a U.S. quarter out of your one eye? What a philosophical inquiry. I don't know. If I could, if I had to give birth right now and I got to choose, I'd probably try and do it like Majin Buu. So I'd vomit up the creature. I'd really rather not tear my whole ass out or anything like that. That's Piccolo. No, Majin Buu did that too, right? When he vomited out into Super Buu? Or am I misremembering? The trial proceedings included a medical examination of Coppola, with the panel concluding the degree of psychiatric impairment did not satisfy the threshold level, according to the judgment. Lawsuits that are seeking damage for non-economic losses, such as this one, require that an injury is significant, the judgment said. With regards to the medical panel's conclusion, Coppola said he disagreed with it, though the judgment said he was unable to agitate the correctness of it. I can't believe he didn't get $1 billion out of this, because he watched his wife's C-section, and then they got a divorce 3 years later. I want to see if this was televised. I'd love to see how he defended himself. Unfortunately, no footage exists of how this panned out, but man, I would really like to hear some of his arguments. No, listen, Your Honor, you don't understand. A baby came out from her tummy. I can't sleep anymore. I can't even look at her anymore. It's why our marriage fell apart, damn it. It's the hospital's fault for letting me see such a thing. I also love the confidence and delusion to ask for $1 billion from this. Our marriage was so good, Your Honor, you don't understand. It was worth at least $1 billion in order to make up for all of this hardship. I can't believe this. How could they be so cruel to let me see my child being born? No, damn you. Now, obviously, I think this is one of those cases where someone knows that it's ridiculous, but they try anyway and hope to settle out of court. So they go for this alarmingly huge number and then try and negotiate behind closed doors to just squash it. But with something this outlandish, that was never even in the cards. This is such a bogus baloney claim that it never even made it anywhere and never stood a chance either. I think there is a 0% chance that this guy is permanently scarred for life after watching his wife give birth. I understand C-sections are a little scary. I know what they are. Now, granted, I've never seen one in person, so maybe it's different in the Thunderdome. Maybe I'd see it and also just have a full-blown breakdown, my universe crumbles around me, and it fucks me up for life. But even in that case, I still don't think I'd ever win a case for $1 billion because of that. I think that's a hard sell right there. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this one a little bit because this one had me giggling. This is probably this has to be among the largest asks for a lawsuit based on legitimately nothing. So yeah, just wanted to talk about this a bit. That's it. So yeah. I always thought Billy Mitchell was the king of frivolous lawsuits, but he can't even hold a candle to Russia. You remember a few months ago we were talking about how Russia is suing Google for over $2.5 decillion, which is an unfathomable amount of money. If you added up every single breath every single human being has ever taken since Adam and Eve, it wouldn't even come close to 2.5 decillion, let alone 2.5 decillion doubloons being a reasonable amount of money to ask for. It doesn't exist. It can't exist. I just learned about another lawsuit coming from Russia where a Russian League of Legends streamer has successfully sued Twitch for over $200 Nonillion, so a little less than what Google's on the hook for, all because he received a ban on the platform and was able to make a case in Russian court that is trying to enforce a $200 Nonillion fine on Twitch for the injustice this League of Legends streamer faced, even though in his entire time on Twitch, he himself only made $2,000. So the math checks out. actually. That seems about par for the course. It is so interesting. To help put this number in perspective, just how preposterous it is, there is an estimated 200 sextillion stars in the known universe. So this League of Legends streamer is looking to receive more money than there are stars in the known universe. Good luck. I mean, maybe he'll get some fairy godparents and be able to poof that money into existence, because that's the only way that shit's gonna happen. I was gonna try and find a clever way of tying $200 Nonillion into a subtle cheeky shoutout, but I couldn't, so I'm gonna do it abruptly. Go to usecheeky.com and use code LUCKY for our St. Patrick's Day sale, where you can get 10% off all of our soap. It's the best soap in the universe. In fact, if you use Cheeky, over 200 Nonillion beings across the universe will say that you look and smell great. You look real clean. So yeah, it's usecheeky.com, and the code is LUCKY for the 10% off. Now to sum up the lore here, he was a League of Legends streamer named Lickrit, and he was suspended in 2022 after the invasion of Ukraine, and the US imposed sanctions, and he was banned as a result. His father is also a Russian oligarch who apparently has some pretty close ties to Putin. After being banished to the Shadow Realm and not receiving payments from Twitch as a result of the sanctions, he took it to a Russian court in June and October of 2022, which Twitch called a violation of its terms of service. The first lawsuit was dismissed without prejudice, but the second one, well, the Russian law decided that one's got some meat on its bones. That one's got some real oomph to it, some pep in its step, and said that it violated his rights by suspending and demonetizing his accounts. So, the Russian court demanded that Twitch restore the account or pay a compounding penalty for non-compliance, basically the naughty boy penalty, where if you don't play ball and bend the knee to the most outrageous of demands, it's going to get worse. And Twitch, since they haven't reinstated the account, is racking up a fine of 100,000 rubles each day the account is not reinstated, and doubling each week without limit, per Twitch's lawsuit, which has reached astronomical levels. That's the exact same John Madden playbook textbook maneuver we saw Russia use against Google. The compounding penalty of 1,000 rubles every day and doubling each week. That's how you've reached these 2.5 Decillion and now $200 Nonillion fines. More money than exists on the planet, no doubt. And this is their go-to, it seems, in Russian courts. If they're going to penalize a company, it looks like they go for this compounding penalty anime finishing move. This is their Kamehameha. It seems like this is pretty common, and I'm only just now learning about how frequent it is. I kind of want to take a plunge into some other notable court cases in Russia just to see if they do this for everything. Like a baker sold you stale bread, you took him to court, and now he owes you 1,000 rubles every day that you've had to have that stale bread in your intestinal tract, and it doubles each week without limit. I just wonder how often that's used. You know what I mean? Because now we've seen 2 instances of it, and it's just comical. I'm sure Twitch is going to fork over $200 Nonillion any day now. I can already just see the League of Legends streamer doing this with his hands like, we won, we did it, so any day now that money's going to be hitting my piggy bank. I'm sure Twitch is going to start feeling the pressure of this imaginary money demand very soon. You might as well be suing Twitch for glorbluckles. It's actual nonsense gibberish here, because these numbers are not reasonable at all. It's phony baloney. You can't actually enforce them no matter what. But it's not stopping them from trying, and I really appreciate that chutzpah, because it is fucking amazing. A Twitch lawyer said, because this penalty doubles each week, it purportedly is now larger than all the money in the world, unjustified on any measure, wholly disproportionate to less than the $2,000 in revenue generated by the League of Legends streamer's account while active. But in 2023, the League of Legends streamer filed a Turkish enforcement action to enforce the Russian ruling, serving the action on Amazon's Turkey office, which maintains that the agreements that he signed were with Twitch, not Amazon, making the actions invalid. Twitch and Amazon have been deprived of legal certainty provided by those agreements and subjected to Russian courts' application of Russian laws specifically designed to undermine U.S. sanction, Twitch lawyers wrote. Twitch is now looking to U.S. courts to kind of pump the brakes on this lunacy here. it's a joke. Like, this is just a complete circus of a lawsuit. I don't think there's any reasonable person on the planet that would read this case and be like, nope, League of Legends streamer is 100% in the right here. He is owed $200 million for the suspension. Now, from what I can see, he wasn't suspended due to, like, bad behavior. He didn't do anything naughty. Like, he didn't, bring his sack out on stream and get rambunctious or anything. It truly was the result of those sanctions that went into place that prevented them from being able to send out payments to Russian streamers. And I'm not normally one to defend Twitch, but what the fuck were they supposed to do there? Just ignore the sanctions and get themselves in the legal hot water for it? Just so they could pay this League of Legends streamer his $200 for the year? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know how they were supposed to, like, do that. And as far as the suspension goes, I don't think it was exclusive to just his account. From what I've read from the sanctions, they did that for a lot of Russian streamers. So it doesn't look like they decided just to fuck this guy in the face for no reason. So, yeah, I just had to talk about that. These Russian lawsuits of compounding penalties are fucking incredible. They are so goofy. It's just not real. But it is kind of a fun thought experiment. Let's say Amazon as a whole, not just Twitch specifically, is on the hook here for the $200 million. This League of Legends streamer's got him in the palm of his hands, and he's forcing Amazon to run it down mid for him and actually give him this money eventually. Assuming Amazon makes $1 trillion a year, which they don't. From what I can see, they make about $580 billion a year, so like they're halfway there, but it's easier to use $1 trillion. If they make $1 trillion a year, it would take them an entire millennium, 1,000 years, of every dollar they make throughout that millennium going to this debt to even make it to a quadrillion dollars, which is not even a fraction of the total that they owe this League of Legends streamer. It would take them until the universe itself dies of a heat death to even come close to being able to make that amount of money to pay him back. It's just not possible. Unless you have a galaxy brain intellect like me. You see, if I was CEO of Twitch and I was tasked with getting us out of this pickle here, I know exactly the solution. I know exactly what I'd do. I'd say, look, we honor our debts. Friend, we got off onto the wrong foot and we want to make things all square here. And then I'd print a bill that says $200 million on it, and I'd hand him the $200 million bill and say, we're good. Because that's the only fucking way that this could possibly ever end with this demand. Unless, of course, it just gets thrown out, which it doesn't seem like Russian courts are willing to do. So, you just make up a bill that's $200 million and say, Godspeed figuring out what to do with that, I suppose. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. That's it. See ya. Gaming. Dusted off a little classic meme for you there. Is meant to be an entertaining hobby. But for one man in China, it wasn't entertaining at all. In fact, it was a source of misery and dread. And the game in question is not League of Legends, like many of you probably immediately assumed. It's a game called Three Kingdoms Kill Online. And this one man had been at the top of the leaderboards, wreaking havoc for 15 years in the Crucible. And now he is finally suing the game developer for the trauma he has experienced. What trauma? You're asking yourself, scratching your head. Well, you see, in Three Kingdoms Kill Online, there is an evil little mechanic at play where you can disrespect your opponents by throwing eggs and sandals at them. And you see, this gamer, for 15 years, suffered at the hands of these heathens throwing eggs and sandals at him. And he said it's been taking a huge toll on his life, ruining his self-esteem, and calculates that he has been slapped by virtual eggs and sandals over 4,800 times in just the last year alone. Now, I'm sure all of us have been through traumatic experiences, but we can all agree nothing even comes close to what this poor soul has gone through. I can't even imagine 15 years of virtual egg and sandal slaps. My God, I can only wish him the best on his legal pursuit. I talked about it on stream a little bit, and this is a lawsuit that I've been really trying my best to stay as in tune on as possible. It is a Chinese lawsuit, so the information I get comes from China and gets translated, and it's not the most active updates in the case, but I am so captivated by this idea that this guy is suffering because people troll him at the end of the games by spamming egg and sandal emotes. That is unbelievable to me, and I'm so curious to see how it shakes out, because apparently he's got a real case with this. So let me give you a little bit more of the basics. I covered them on stream, and then I'll come in with a little bit more I've learned. I read a story, I think it was 2 days ago. A man in China is suing a game developer, I can't remember who, I think it's Kingdom Clash, because he said that over the course of his thousands of hours playing Kingdom Clash, he has had his life ruined by players he beats in the game throwing bananas at him. And he said that every time he gets hit with a banana, it lowers his self-esteem to the point that his life is not the same. It is amazing. Let me pull this up for you. Man sues gaming company after being virtually slapped 4,800 times in multiplayer game. Self-esteem hammered. I can already just imagine him tossing and turning. I won my game. But ex-Shadow Slayer 5 won the war. He threw a banana at me. Fuck. Fuck. What did I do? Wow, I closed my eyes for a second and I have 2 different auto-playing ads. A Chinese gamer has taken legal action against the gaming company, alleging emotional distress caused by repeated virtual attacks from other players. The man using the pseudonym Kyobin has been an avid player of Three Kingdoms Kill online for the past 15 years and currently holds the game's highest rank. The game, developed by a company based in Hangzhou, was launched in 2009 and is set during China's historic Three Kingdoms period. It allows 4 to 8 players to battle it out in matches that last between 10 to 30 minutes. Kyobin said that after each match he won, opponents would throw virtual items like eggs and straw sandals at his character. These items would trigger animations that resembled facial slaps, which he described as emotionally damaging and humiliating. He calculated he had been hit more than 4,800 times in the past 6 months alone. And the other article I read, it was bananas. Was it a different translation? Is it eggs or bananas? Because that makes a huge difference. Bananas got a lot more girth to it. It's going to hurt a lot more and feel worse on the receiving end of the virtual slapping. He believes the repeated attacks were a way for other players to vent frustration after losing, with one incident lasting over 90 seconds. Every time I am hit with eggs, I feel my self-esteem is harmed and I get depressed, he said, adding that the public nature of these virtual slaps made him feel insulted in front of other players. Honestly, if it was me, I'd lean into that. I don't know if there's game chat, but if I saw him in my lobby, he's the top-ranked player, and I'd know it, I'd absolutely just lay into it like, you should feel shame! You're getting slapped with eggs! Yeah, I don't want to play with you again, you're getting slapped with eggs! I don't respect you! I can't imagine, rather, I guess I don't know for sure. I cannot imagine a judge seeing this and being like, wow, this guy deserves compensation. 4,800 eggs and sandals? Where have we gone so wrong in society? The offensive items can either be acquired for free through gameplay or purchased at a low cost, something Kyobin claims the gaming company benefits from. He accused the developers of tolerating and allowing such behavior, saying they profit from it while doing little to address the issue. Rather, the items are there for the sake of a little bit of in-game trolling. Despite reaching out to customer service multiple times, Kyobin said his concerns were ignored, which prompted him to file a lawsuit seeking compensation. The exact amount he is demanding has not been disclosed. He should ask for 100 mil. Absolutely ask for 100 mil. Shoot for the stars. The incident has drawn mixed reactions online, with some users expressing sympathy. Who in the fuck would possibly express sympathy at some guy whining and suing because he's getting slapped with eggs and sandals in a virtual mobile game? You've got to be such a weirdo loser to be like, my heart breaks for you, Kyobin. This is bad. This is bad. No matter how strong a player is, they can still be crushed by eggs and straw sandals, one player wrote. Others shared similar stories of in-game bullying, with one user saying, I was hunted by other players for a month in another game. Every time I logged on, I was attacked and killed, which caused me significant trauma. I can't play my mobile games without the fear of eggs looming. March 31st, spokesperson from the company acknowledged the issue and said the items were originally part of the game's design, but added that restrictions would be introduced. No, don't be a bitch! They also confirmed that the company will cooperate with the court as the case moves forward. Come on!
A lawyer pointed out that the use of eggs and straw sandals is inherently insulting and said that it's the company's responsibility to ensure respectful gaming environment. Well, could I reasonably sue for emotional distress when I lose to Kyobin? It feels bad when I lose, it's causing me significant trauma. Your right is to not be hit with eggs and straw sandals in our game. So that's what it looks like when you get slapped with sandals. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. I can see why it'd take such a toll on him. It's such an interesting case, and it somewhat reminds me of that infamous Twitch lawsuit from a couple years ago, where a gooner tried suing Twitch for like 20 mil because he couldn't stop getting hard and masturbating to female streamers on the platform and accused them of purposefully putting female streamers feeding female streamers to him for the sake of getting him addicted to porn. It was a very interesting lawsuit. And while this doesn't share anything in common with like gooning or whatever, like the gooner suit, it just reminds me of just unhinged claims that they actually push forward and try and put real water in. Like that Twitch lawsuit I just mentioned, that was a real thing that he tried. It wasn't like just a complete throwaway toilet paper suit. Like, it was something he actively pursued. And this is another one of those where it is a real case that is going to actually be examined. The whole crux of it is he believes that the game company has a responsibility to protect players from this kind of disrespect and this kind of insults. It should not be providing players with the ability to slap him with eggs and sandals because it's really hurting his self-esteem and it's making him feel bad. It's making him depressed, as he said. And it seems like he's not the only one that feels that way. There is a sentiment that is expressed here where a lot of people seem to agree, actually. So there is a chance that he actually wins this lawsuit because too many people have slapped him with eggs and sandals in that game, which I just find so interesting. And I'm curious, could this open a can of worms should he win this, where I could start making cases like in something like Fortnite, where they inherently have things built in for the sake of some trolling, like the L dance, or if someone kills me and then cranks a fucking default dance on my corpse, can I come after Epic Games for some trauma that I may have experienced through being embarrassed with these emotes that they have given players access to insult me? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like you could easily make this argument for pretty much any game ever. So I'm very, very interested to see how it all plays out. And I just thought it was so fucking silly about getting slapped with eggs and sandals for 15 years. Just being like a magnet for eggs and then getting really upset. And finally, you're just like, enough is enough. I'm taking it to court. I just think it's so good. So I wanted to talk about it a bit. That's it. See ya. There are a handful of YouTubers that are currently being sued for $1 billion in a class action lawsuit right now due to them promoting FTX. I don't need to read you the bedtime story of the FTX collapse and disaster. In a very quick and dirty nutshell, it was a very, very large cryptocurrency exchange. You may have even seen the commercial with Larry David where it was, "Don't be like Larry. Crypto's coming and you don't want to miss it, so hop on board, choo-choo, this shit's going right to the moon." That kind of thing. It was this big hype train that seemed to have no end until it ended. The whole thing went tits up, completely collapsed, and was worth less than the gum stuck under your school desk. It was revealed to be fundamentally just a giant scam, and the person behind it, Sam Bankman-Fried, this weaselly goblin homunculus, was basically just a big fraudster, the puppet master behind this whole thing. And so the train derailed, and instead of spilling vinyl chloride, it spilt dust, because there was no money in there at all. So many people lost so much, it was a complete catastrophe, and since the days of its crumbling, a lot has happened, not just with the people on the inside like Sam Bankman-Fried, but even the people who were loosely connected to it, like brand ambassadors, for example. They've already put Tom Brady, for instance, in the crosshairs. Tom Brady was a big FTX shill, as were quite a few other celebrities, but one of them I'd like to make special note of is Shaq. According to numerous sources, Shaq is currently trying to be issued a lawsuit for his involvement with FTX, but is hiding from them.
in his own home. So it's just almost kind of comical to think about Shaq hiding from the FTX lawsuit, like real Looney Tunes style, like he's, crouching behind his bar in his home or something while the guy's trying to deliver paperwork to him, but he can't find him, like a mission out of fucking Splinter Cell or something. It's a wild situation. A ton of A-list celebrities are being sued because of all of this, and now it extends to more than just the A-list Hollywood celebrities and sports stars. It's extending to the YouTubers as well, which brings us to today's topic. There is a handful of YouTubers who are getting slapped with a $1 billion lawsuit for their involvement in the promotion of FTX. 1 billion clams. 1 billion sweet, precious doubloons are at stake now for these YouTubers. And CoffeeZilla just posted a video going over all of it in great detail, so I'll put a link to that in the description. I just want to kind of give you the nitty-gritty of it and kind of get into what's going on and really what it means. Now, you might have had a little twinkle in your eye when you noticed a few of those names were familiar to you, and that's totally natural because these are huge channels on YouTube. They have millions of subscribers, and all of them are financial channels. Their content is always centered around big schmeckles. The topics are money, making money, advice, following trends, crypto, the whole kit and caboodle. And speaking of recognizing names on the list, I don't know if you caught it, but we actually have a cameo from a supervillain we may have seen in the past, BitBoy Crypto, Ben. Ben is named in this lawsuit. BitBoy Crypto is someone I've made 2 videos on now. The first was when he sued a YouTuber who was making jokes about him, and the second time was when he called a completely random woman a child molester because the woman was calling him out on promoting dog shit crypto. So, I'm not the biggest fan of BitBoy Crypto. So seeing his name in there kind of gave me little butterflies in my tummy. I had a little smile like, oh wow, how the tables have turned, because usually BitBoy Crypto is the one administering these lawsuits, which is a joke CoffeeZilla also made in his video, because it's just an easy dunk. BitBoy Crypto is very loosey-goosey with frivolous lawsuits, and now he's being named in a big lawsuit. It's poetic to a certain extent. But I'm going to have to go to bat for him, because BitBoy Crypto, as pointed out by CoffeeZilla, was actually one of the very few financial channels who started calling out FTX before they even collapsed. I know, I couldn't believe it when I heard that either. I didn't think I was even in reality anymore. I thought I got trapped in a Naruto genjutsu. The odds of BitBoy Crypto offering good advice are incalculably low. It's almost impossible. It's like almost as impossible as fucking Netflix's Big Mouth telling a good joke. BitBoy Crypto's entire career is built upon offering the worst crypto investment advice into these absolute dogshit moonshot coins that almost always lose his audience money. And yet, in this specific case, he fucking nailed it. He got it right. According to CoffeeZilla and his research, Ben had actually made a handful of videos letting people know that they need to get out of FTX immediately. That it's toxic, it's bad, and shit's not looking good, it's evil, this and that. And he was absolutely right. I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day, as they say. And Ben absolutely hit the nail on the head. He pinned the tail right on that donkey. He was telling people like a month before the collapse even happened that they need to pull out now. And still, he gets named in the lawsuit here. As you can imagine, a lawsuit like this is a reputational stain for all of these YouTubers because people look to them for financial advice. And now their credibility has been fucking slammed. It's been slapped by this because they were shilling a fucking scam, basically, that lost a ton of people money. The big issue is they weren't just talking about FTX positively because they wanted to talk about FTX organically. A lot of them were being sponsored to talk about FTX and promote it. In fact, some of them even had a podcast that was sponsored by FTX. It's now been deleted, of course. They buried that as far into the soil as they could. But they were being paid to shill FTX, which, of course, gave FTX access to even more victims. It brought more people to the slaughterhouse here and completely butchered their finances when FTX inevitably crashed. So now let's start eating the meat to get to the bone. It's targeting financial YouTubers. I think you can probably imagine why. Financial YouTubers are looked at as experts in this kind of subject matter. Promoting FTX gives the perception to the audience that they've done their due diligence. They're working on the assumption that this financial YouTuber is trusted source when it comes to this kind of information, so this product, which fits right in that wheelhouse, must be something legit and safe. Because this financial YouTuber is talking about it and feels comfortable enough promoting it, it's probably legit. They're viewed as experts, thus, when they're doing an FTX sponsorship, it makes it seem even more legit than if it was just some completely random goofball that has no knowledge whatsoever on anything like crypto. So that, to me, makes a lot of sense, but in CoffeeZilla's video, he talks to a real lawyer, Legal Eagle. Legal Eagle is an amazing channel on YouTube that I can't recommend enough, and Legal Eagle weighs in and says that he actually views this as kind of a meritless lawsuit. I'll do my best to break it down very quickly, but keep in mind I'm also a fucking idiot, so the first thing that the lawsuit needs to be successful is it needs to connect the endorser to FTX itself. But the people that were endorsing it, I mean, they're not employees of FTX, they're not agents, they're not directors or anything like that. And oh my god, I got something in my eye. Fucking Sam Bankman-Fried shot a dust particle right in my eye. And then the second main component is they need to have the endorsers be liable, kind of like privy to what was happening at the behind the scenes of FTX, which Legal Eagle argues is kind of factually odd because even if they're endorsing FTX, it doesn't mean they understand what's going on the inside of the company. They're not necessarily going to be given information that isn't available to the public. They're not going to automatically know more than what's publicly accessible to everybody else. So he fundamentally says that it's not the strongest case and he doesn't think it's going to go anywhere, but it's going to be expensive for the YouTubers named in the suit to fight it. But regardless of whether or not the lawsuit itself is successful, the community of these channels is not super happy about this whole situation because a lot of them fell hook, line, and sinker into FTX because of their recommendations. In CoffeeZilla's video, he interviews one of the people here, and CoffeeZilla doesn't pull punches. I always very much appreciate that about his interviews. So here he does absolutely lay it down to get to the bottom of very important questions such as, are you going to give back the money you made from the sponsorships? And all of those things. And all of it's answered in CoffeeZilla's video. But one thing that's interesting about the person being interviewed here is that he puts the onus on the viewers that fell for it, not so much him. In fact, he makes it very clear that he doesn't feel responsible. He just feels bad that some of the people that lost all of their money for being irresponsible in their own personal way. He doesn't feel responsible for it, which I found very interesting. I agree with CoffeeZilla that the viewers look at channels like his and other financial YouTubers as experts in this field. So when they're recommending something like FTX, they assume due diligence has been done and that this is a trustworthy organization that they can put money into. And in the case of FTX, that couldn't have been further from the truth. Thus, their credibility now is completely in the shitter. And a lot of people lost a lot of money from this trusting these YouTubers, which is a big problem. And that's a point CoffeeZilla likes to make at the end of the video that I think is a very strong point. So overall, these YouTubers are being sued for $1 billion. It doesn't, from the sound of it, from the expert like Legal Eagle, it doesn't sound like they're actually going to lose a collective $1 billion from all of this unless some kind of crazy shit comes out. But regardless, it highlights a huge issue where they would promote this product without ever really bothering to look that deep into it, which isn't a problem that's exclusive to just these financial YouTubers. That extends to the broader platform of YouTube as a whole. And in fact, it's happened to me before as well. On the official podcast, we actually had a sponsorship slot for Robinhood. And even though Robinhood isn't like an outright scam or anything, at least not that I know of, they have done some unforgivably shady shit. And I still feel awful about that whole situation because they had like 5 slots on the podcast and I thought it was a good service, but I was kind of naive to think that. I am no Robinhood fan anymore after the multitude of scummy moves they've made. So it is something that has happened in other verticals of the platform, but in this case, it is targeted directly at the financial YouTubers in the lawsuit, and it's a very interesting situation here that I'm going to keep my eye on to see how it all plays out. But anyway, just want to talk about it a little bit. That's about it. See ya.
I often get told how negative I am, but I think we can all agree there's been a little something special that's made this Grinch's heart grow 3 sizes. And that little puppy is named Schedule 1. I haven't streamed a game this much since Elden Ring released, and I haven't made this many videos on a single game since Elden Ring released. It's pretty clear I like the game a lot. I got those anime hearts in my eyes anytime I hop on Schedule 1. I've become addicted to it, much like my clients in the game itself. I feel like I'm making lifelong friends in there through this business, like Austin. That beautiful bastard is such a fiend, I could roll up a urinal cake and tell him that it's weed and he'd thank me for it. I could walk up to that man and tell him to think about meth, and he would pay me $500 just for the imagination that I put in his head for him to smoke. It's just such a fun fucking game is the point I'm getting at, and I like it a lot. And right now, it's in a little bit of legal hot water because a competitor in the drug dealing simulator space is launching a lawsuit against them for copyright infringement. The goobers that launched the lawsuit are Movie Games, that's the publisher, and the game that they're saying has been infringed upon is Drug Dealer Simulator, which also has a sequel. And you can see that in response to them launching this lawsuit against Schedule 1, they've been review bombed, and now the reviews are overwhelmingly negative. We'll get into the specifics of their claims in a moment, but I want to set the stage for anyone that might not be aware of the phenomenon that is Schedule 1. It's a drug dealing simulator game that was created by a single person. His name's Tyler Video Game Studio. He developed Schedule 1 and launched it, and it blew up. The game is extremely fun. It maintains over 300,000 players per day with a 450k peak. This is big potatoes here. And it's an extremely fun game. I have been a big fan of the drug dealing simulator type games for a while. You might remember my Weed Shop arc. I've also played Drug Dealer Simulator, and I can say with full confidence, Schedule 1 is the best one. It has so much depth, it is so enjoyable, just with like the goofiness that it allows you to do, as well as a world that really feels alive. There's so much you do in there, from actually selling the drugs, hiring dealers, beating up the civilians, specifically Peter. Every 24-hour period, I make sure that Peter is either beaten within half an inch of his life, shot as many times as I can possibly find ammo for, or buried alive or thrown in the ocean. And, just as many times as I can torture this man, I make sure to take that opportunity to do so. He deserves it. But there's just a lot to do, even outside of, like, dealing the drugs. Like, the movement is really fun. There's a lot of tech to even just movement with the skateboard. You can also launder money. You need to launder money, actually. It's just, there's so much here. You go from weed to meth to coke. Like, I'm now in the coke trade. I'm pushing that good cocaina now, and I'm really excited. I just think the game is the best drug dealing simulator out there, which is not like the most competitive market. You know, we're not talking about like a first person shooter genre here. You're dealing drugs. There's only a handful of these games, and one of them, Drug Dealer Simulators, getting in a big stink about the success Schedule 1 is experiencing because its title never got to those levels. I think Drug Dealer Simulator was a fine game, but Schedule 1 is just a lot better, and it ate its goddamn lunch. And they are not happy about it, which is why they've launched this lawsuit trying to make the claim that they've infringed on their copyrights. According to Movie Games, they noticed some similarities to Drug Dealer Simulator and launched an investigation. On March 24th, 2025, the release date of Schedule 1, an internal analysis of the company's IP, including Drug Dealer Simulator and Drug Dealer Simulator 2, as well as Schedule 1 project, was initiated by the company. This analysis immediately identified the use of several elements protected by copyright, including parts of the game's storyline, mechanics, and UI. This leaves me so curious what copyrights they're referring to that have been infringed upon. Like, who's behind this company? Pablo Escobar? How could you possibly own the copyright to drug making? Like, there's just no fucking way. Like, they have a weed-making process in the real world that gets translated into the game in a silly fashion. You can't patent that. Like, Warner Bros. Has patented the Nemesis system, which I've talked about a lot. I've bemoaned that pretty frequently, but that's a very specific mechanic. This is not. You can't somehow say, like, no, we are the only company allowed to showcase coke being manufactured or being sold on the street. Like, it just doesn't work that way, I don't think. How could you possibly copyright that? It's just another game in the same genre, thus it's going to be utilizing similar methods because you're still making the same drugs in the genre. Like, very few companies ever go this far. Like, take, for example, Souls-like games, which have become the new hotness. Souls-like games are spreading like the fucking common cold. Let's take, for example, a really good one, Lies of P. Well, Lies of P didn't invent the Souls-like genre. It borrowed a lot of elements from everything FromSoft had built up over the decades. And you didn't see FromSoft sue Lies of P, and you don't see FromSoft suing Neo or First Berserker or any other really successful Souls-like games. Like, this is just a silly lawsuit, in my opinion. And unless they can point to things that Schedule 1 literally stole from Drug Simulator, like one-to-one, then I just don't see how they could possibly have a fucking case. And they also mentioned that the storylines? What do you mean the story? The story in Schedule 1 is you were making weed in an RV, your Uncle Nelson got busted, so you ran away, now you're in a city making weed. Which, as you grow your business, you start to branch out beyond Weenie Hut Jr. weed, and you start manufacturing and selling meth and coke and all the good stuff, the bells and whistles. That's the whole story. Drug Dealer Simulator doesn't start that way. You're not in an RV, and you don't have an Uncle Nelson. You start in an apartment, and you get a call from Eddie. Like, there's not a real story to Schedule 1. The only thing these two games have in common narratively is they both use a phone to feed the player tutorials. In Schedule 1, you get Uncle Nelson on the payphone. In Drug Dealer Sim, you get Eddie on your phone. But you can't possibly copyright the phone mechanic here because so many games do that outside of just these two. Are you going to go after Rockstar Games next for their usage of phones in GTA? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, there's not anything narratively that I can find that's even similar between these two games, other than you start making drugs and selling them on the street. Now, if we want to get into some really nitpicky specifics that I feel like is probably going to be mentioned in this lawsuit, there are things in Drug Dealer Simulator that are similar in Schedule 1, such as the way you save the game. So in Drug Dealer Sim, you save the game here, like you'll see in Markiplier's Let's Play. In Schedule 1, you save in a similar way in the doorways. So those two things are similar, but there's no way you fucking copyright that. I have seen that exact same method of saving games in other games on Steam that I've played during, like, bad game nights. That is not unique to Drug Dealer Simulator, thus I can't imagine that that is copyrighted. Another example I think they're going to try is the body searching. So on the left you'll see the Drug Dealer Sim body searching, and on the right Schedule 1. I guess it's similar because they both have a progress bar. But what, did you patent progress bars in drug dealing genre? Like, I think it's just complete fucking lunacy here. Like, the body search existing in both games, that's not Schedule 1 stealing from you. That's, once again, just a whole drug dealing simulator idea in the genre, where body searches would happen with the fuzz, with the police coming through and patrolling. That's not something that is specific that was stolen from Drug Dealer Simulator, even though they both have a progress bar. You know what I mean? I think it's just silly. I think they are just so hurt that Schedule 1 has blown up like this when their game didn't, that now they're lashing out like, they shouldn't be able to make this much money when we didn't. We deserve a piece of that as pioneers in the drug dealing simulator genre, which I think is just ridiculous. Again, this is just another game in that genre that, of course, some of the mechanics are going to be similar because it's the same genre. You're still making drugs. There's only so many mechanics you can possibly have to showcase that process. And for what it's worth, it's not one-to-one in Schedule 1 and Drug Dealer Simulator. They're pretty different experiences, even in that regard. To me, this feels like if Overwatch came out and said, we're suing Marvel Rivals for copyright infringement. We're the only game in the hero genre allowed to be successful. Get the fuck out of here. Time to bully them and strong-arm them out. It's copyright infringement. It's too similar to Overwatch. And it's like, okay, the games do play similar. They're in the same genre. But you can't possibly argue that any copyright was infringed upon when these games are fundamentally different. Like, yes, they're in the same genre, but they're very, very different games. It's the same with Schedule 1 and Drug Dealer Simulator. I guess we'll see what the investigation turns up, I suppose, but from having experienced both of these games, Schedule 1 feels nothing like Drug Dealer Simulator, and I cannot imagine anything was actually stolen from them in the making of Schedule 1. Like, this just feels like such a fucking delusional lawsuit out of desperation. And it's pathetic. It makes Drug Dealer Sim developers and the publisher look like such bitches for this. just really salty that Schedule 1 is as popular as it is. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit. That's it. So, yeah.
I just read something so ridiculous that I've been sitting here for the last 10 or 15 minutes just stewing in my own filthy anger, almost in this meditative state, just trying to process the absurdity of it. And this is a situation I'm not even involved in, and yet still it has managed to steam my vegetables, just because of how outrageous it is. This whole thing is so crazy, I just couldn't help myself but share it with all of you, so I hope you don't mind if I hit the dance floor real quick and bust it wide open for you here. So 2 months ago, some of you may have seen that Afro Man posted this music video, "Will You Help Me Repair My Door?" This went viral on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube as well, and basically it's Afro Man making a song out of a raid that was conducted on his property based on narcotics and kidnapping claims, and it turns out it was completely bogus. They got nothing out of it, and they kind of ransacked this whole place, and he had cameras set up around his property that recorded all of it, so he made a music video kind of teasing them about it. He made a catchy little jingle about the whole thing, and the title is about, them breaking his door and breaking his gate and just going over the damage that they caused there while looking really silly. And now he is being sued for it. He is being sued because the officers were offended, their feelings got hurt, and they're claiming emotional distress. He clowned on them, and it hurt their goddamn feelings so much that now they're coming after him legally. It wasn't enough to just destroy his property and pillage his home like they were Vikings, and also traumatize his kids apparently, which is something he mentions in his song. Now they want to slap him even more by issuing this lawsuit to him, which I think is just an absolute load of baloney. What a pile of dirty barnacles. 4 deputies, 2 sergeants, and a detective with the Adams County Sheriff's Office brought the suit earlier this month, claiming an invasion of privacy. Let me just stop you right there, Chief. An invasion of privacy, huh? You are on his private property. He has every right to record you. I'm not a lawyer, but would you also make this claim if you made yourself look fucking silly at a Starbucks who has security camera footage of you in their store? Let's say you spilt coffee or you were pouring coffee down your lieutenant's butthole, giving him an enema in public, and they're like, "Oh, this is kind of embarrassing. We're going to sue you for an invasion of privacy because you filmed us." Would the argument work there in that place of business? I imagine private residents also still have the right to record you when you are on their property. They don't need your consent. You entered their domain. You stepped into their neck of the woods. I feel like they have the right to record you. But again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a stupid paint-huffing idiot when it comes to the law. But I still just find the claim comical. An invasion of privacy. I guess them going through all of his shit, throwing his suits all over the place, breaking down his doors and all of that in his own home. I guess that's not an invasion of privacy. That's just a general wrongful invasion, considering this whole thing was completely bogus. It was a completely botched little raid here. They're claiming that Afro Man used their faces from the raid and used it in music videos and social media posts without their consent. Again, I don't think he needed that, considering they're on his private property in the first place, but regardless, they go on saying it's caused them emotional distress, embarrassment, ridicule, loss of reputation, and humiliation. So these officers were born with glass bones and paper skin, huh? They can't take a few jokes on the internet. I imagine they're lying about this. I can't imagine they actually suffered any real emotional distress or anything. I don't think people were on the streets shooting spitballs at them as they walked by, pointing and laughing. Though they should, because they're fucking clowns for what they did here. I can't show the music video, but I highly recommend watching it. They look so fucking stupid in this thing. And it's all dog shit. None of it was real to begin with here. It was just a completely failed raid from top to bottom. And they even had the audacity to disconnect his cameras when they noticed that the security cameras were on. It's just foul. Completely foul. I do hope they feel silly. But apparently, the silliness doesn't stop there. Maybe it's a humiliation fetish, because now they're suing him and making themselves look even stupider, which is crazy. I'll go ahead and boil all this down for you. The plaintiffs are seeking all of Afro Man's profits from the use of their personas. That includes the proceeds from songs, music videos, and live event tickets, as well as any of the money that he made using their likeness and his brand and other merchandise. And they're also looking for an injunction to take down the videos. Afroman made like an entire album's worth of songs around this raid on his property, and they all fucking bang. It is so amazing. Afroman absolutely crushed it with this whole thing. It literally turned into like a money-making merchandise music video, like empire, all off of this failed raid from them. And now they're coming to put their hand in his cookie jar and take all of that money away that he made from this whole situation. Afroman is attempting to countersue them for the undeniable damage this had on my client's family, career, and property. Law enforcement officers were acting on a warrant that stated probable cause existed that drugs and drug paraphernalia would be found on his property and that trafficking and kidnapping had taken place there. But it turns out that boogeyman was completely wrong. All of those suspicions turned out to be unfounded, and the raid failed to turn up any real criminal evidence, so charges were never filed. And in Afroman's music video, through the cameras, he was able to notice that some of the deputies may have seized some of his money. He was talking about some missing money that took place during all of this, and whoa, can you believe it? After a subsequent review by the State Bureau of Criminal Investigations, they determined that the deputies had miscounted the amount seized during the raid itself. What a silly little error that was. What a goofy little freak accident that was, that some of the money was just a little miscounted, and some of it went missing, I guess? Oh, that's odd. So that's really this whole situation. They're suing because they looked fucking stupid here, and a lot of people were making fun of them for this whole situation. Afroman put them on blast and made an entire album's worth of content around it, and now they're out for revenge. So I can't show you the music video, but I highly encourage you watch it. I would like to show you a couple frames from it and just kind of talk about it because it is so fucking wild. I'll go ahead and crop their faces out so they can't feel offended or humiliated here. But, so this is one of the early shots. The officers were going around checking every nook and cranny of his property, I guess for kidnapping victims or like pounds upon pounds of weed. And for some reason, Officer Action over here, fucking Danger Commander, comes over and like looks behind the couch here as if he was gonna find like some kind of like goblin or something back there that he was gonna light up. Like, I understand they thought that there was some kidnapping element to this whole thing, but I mean, even in this situation, if there was a kid back there and you climb over the back of the couch, you're immediately pointing a gun in their face. I can't imagine that's the best way of looking for kidnapping victims. Like, the way they go through his whole property is very cartoonish. Here's a little shot of some of the team out here for the class field trip. One of them is dressed like he's ready for actual combat, as if he was gonna get in here like a G.I. Joe episode and fucking hunt down Cobra Commander in this property. So the first thing they did when they arrived is they busted through this gate here and broke it. So Afroman's already down one gate just from them showing up. And then they go to his door, and this is where you get the title of the song. They blast this shit in. This shit just gets rocketed off the frame here. So, you know, he's asking, you know, can you repair my door and my gate? Like, that's the whole point of the song. Like, can you repair this shit? And then also pointing out all of the other goofy things that happened. And here's where Afroman started to get a little suspicious about them potentially taking money from him, so he starts talking about it in this scene right here. This was already after going through and throwing around half of his belongings and like going through each and every suit pocket they could find. And here's the final shot. This is where the fun comes to an end. They disconnect his cameras, so they open up this panel on the wall and they disconnect all the shit, so he could no longer record the rest of what was going on the property. I just really had to talk about it because it got me fuming. To turn around and sue someone for hurt feelings after you were just in the wrong to begin with is just such a level of delusion that I can't help but be upset about. Afroman did nothing wrong. He recorded you guys and then took a bad situation that you have created. The claims you were there investigating, nothing was ever found, so it all seems like bullshit. And he took that and he made comedy out of it. He made content out of it to try and turn something shitty into something less shitty, and now he's being punished for it, or at least attempting to, from these extremely sensitive, I guess, officers that are super offended that people have been making fun of them for this. Like, it's pretty disgusting. So yeah, I just wanted to at least put this out there because it was something that I felt very strongly about. That's really about it. So yeah. Monster Energy files lawsuit against indie game over title. Monster Energy has filed a lawsuit against the indie game Dark Deception Monsters and Mortals. This time the company claimed the developer Glowstick Entertainment broke copyright with the horror game's title. So, no, wait. So if I go on Steam right now, I bet I have a game with Monster in the title. Clash of Monsters, Garshasp. Well, they wouldn't fuck with Garshasp. He's way too powerful. Monster Hunter, Monster Challenge. So are they trying to like own the word monster? Because this seems like such a weird topic or target. I don't know this game, but I can't imagine it's like super huge. Yeah, I just read that they did this to Ubisoft Gods and Monsters, and of course Ubisoft, being the cucks they are, fucking bent the knee to it, I guess. Company has expanded its settlement terms by preventing Glowstick Entertainment from ever using green and white logo on a black background. What the fuck? Huh? How is their title confusingly similar to the energy drink in any way? What in tarnation? How? It's not like it's just called Monster. It is literally called Dark Deception, Monsters, and Mortals. So it's even plural, too. How is there any level of confusion? This is some awful, litigious bullying for no reason. How popular is this game? I'm unfamiliar with it. Is it a big game? Is that why they're doing it? There's 8 people playing this game right now with a 24-hour peak of 17 hours, and the all-time peak was 254. Why are you targeting them? Why? What the fuck? This doesn't make any sense. They actually went out of their way to find an obscure title to be an asshole to them. This game came out in 2020 as well. It's not even like it's a new thing. It looks like they're trying to set a legal precedent to sue bigger companies. Oh, interesting. That is very nefarious. I'm not knowledgeable enough on the law to know if that's like actually a plausible strategy, but they did successfully bully Ubisoft, which is... It's a lot bigger than Dark Deception, Monsters, and Mortals. So why would they then downsize? Own the right to the word monster? That fucking sucked for me because my Steam name is Monster. That'd be brutal for me. It's gotta be personal. Yeah, maybe someone on the Monster legal force played Dark Deception, Monsters, and Mortals and was like, damn, this is fucking awful. I'm gonna send them something. I'm gonna sue them. Imagine Rockstar doing that. Brother, we don't even have to imagine. Did you guys forget when Take-Two did that to It Takes Two? Take-Two owns Rockstar. So I guess it wasn't Rockstar themselves, it was Extension. Additionally, Livings posted an official document from Monster Energy to explain their lawsuit's terms. As seen in the image, Monster is pushing to prohibit the word monster in the game's name, claw-like designs, or green and black imagery. Glowstick Entertainment also won't be able to use the word beast or unleash. What is this? What has happened to us as a species? What the fuck? It is well known that Monster Energy is a notorious trademark troll. Unfortunately, they're at it again. For a company that likes to target their drinks at gamers, they also like to try and bully and bankrupt game studios with lengthy, high-dollar litigation. Monster was actually shoehorned into Death Stranding. I guarantee you, somewhere in that game, the words monster, beast, or unleashed was used. That'd be quite a beautiful plot twist if they sued that game after forcing their way in there to be ham-fisted into it. Oh, that's right, they did remove it, didn't they? That's right. Living's plans to fight Monster Energy in court. Dishonest companies like Monster Energy depend on doing their bullying in secret while presenting a clean image to their base, athletes and gamers, he said. Showing their true face publicly is the only real way to stop them. Bro, hats off to this guy. Like I said, I don't know the game. It's not a game I have ever heard of before, but I really hope this blows up their game. I hope they get tons of players and it turns out to be just like this hidden gem. This guy seems to have a good head on his shoulders. He gets it. Monster Energy's past legal battles include suing an Ohio restaurant for containing the word monster on its sign, a Georgia welder for using a similar M logo, and a man's aquarium hobby forum called Monster Fish Keepers. Yeah, this one makes sense. Shame on you. This would have confused me too. If I go to Monster Fish Keepers, I would be wondering, where can I purchase the energy drink? What's all this shit about crustaceans, right? Like, I'd be confused as fuck. That would be a legitimate cause for concern. Those are so close. It has the electrolytes the fish crave. They're gonna try to copyright the Monster Mash next. Thanks to the bits doobie. That's a great fucking idea, actually. Make MWL with Monster vs. Dasani. Not the Dasani part, but having a character in the MWL just named Monster and see if we can get our names in the headlines with Monster Energy suing us. That'd be huge for us. Spread the Moist Wrestling League a bit further. That's a great idea. By getting sued. Yeah, but they wouldn't win the lawsuit. There's no shot. Having a wrestler named Monster and then trying to make the argument that it's confusing for Monster Energy somehow. Like, this is just a frivolous dog shit nothingness. There's just, I can't imagine a world where they could actually win this if it ever makes it to trial. Because who the fuck is going to confuse a Steam game called Dark Deception Monsters and Mortals with Monster Energy? It's just to bully them and keep trying to monopolize the word monster, I guess. I mean, Apple tried to trademark the word apple and the court just said no. I'm sure it'll be a similar case here. Oh, I'm confident they win this. I mean, again, I can't imagine a world where Monster Energy somehow makes a compelling argument that this game is somehow confusing for their brand to their customers, unless Monster's going to have some kind of bombshell revelation during discovery where it's revealed that Monster Energy is actually shrinking everyone's IQ and turning everyone into fucking lobotomites where they can't process a difference between a video game and an energy drink. If they think their customers are so fucking stupid that they're gonna get confused here because they see the word monster and caveman brain activate, so they assume it's an energy drink. Like, I just can't imagine a world where they can make, like, a compelling argument. I wonder how they even found the game. The only way that I could envision the way they found this is that they were on Steam literally looking for anything with the word monster in it to be a target of a lawsuit. That's the only way they'd be able to find it, because again, this game has only ever had 274 players at its peak. That is its biggest player count. It's not a massive game, but I hope it turns into one as a result of all of this. They went out of their way to find someone to sue. It's not the game, it's the font. You're putting words in their mouth, unless it's in this lawsuit. I didn't read the actual lawsuit, but even still, the font is still far removed, and it is still plural monsters, and doesn't match that closely. The only thing in common is that it's all squiggly and spooky, whereas this one, I just don't see it even being close. But that's also not even the argument they were making, I don't think. They were saying that it's confusing for their brand to the customers.
You're looking at an addict, but not to drugs, something much harder and much more noble: drug dealing. It feels good to supply the community with product that they really want and treasure. It really, I'm like Santa Claus, but with smokable items that they really enjoy. Schedule 1's got me in a titty twister. I love that game so much. And yesterday, I made a video talking about an investigation that's been launched into Schedule 1 on the grounds of potential copyright infringement. It was launched by a publisher called Movie Games, and they have a title that also competes in this genre called Drug Dealer Simulator. It's a very competitive genre now. It is cutthroat out here. It's like rival cartels going at each other now. And over the last 24 hours, there's been a lot of new developments here in this season of Breaking Bad Gamer Edition, with a statement from Movie Games themselves, as well as the developer of Drug Dealer Simulator, Bite Runner, coming forward. Also, I want to make a mention of this. I talked about it on stream briefly, but I changed the title of yesterday's video covering this. I initially called it a lawsuit that they launched against Schedule 1, because that's how a lot of other media reported it, as a lawsuit that had been launched. But it's not 100% accurate to say that. It's an investigation that's been launched, which does start the process of a lawsuit if Movie Games decided to pursue it. But right now what it is an investigation after they've said they've identified infringing material in like the narrative, mechanics, UI. I also saw other words expressed saying they identified characteristics of unfair competition. But anyway, there's not an official lawsuit they filed. It is an investigation, which yes, could lead to a lawsuit later on if Movie Games decides they want to go down that path. Nintendo did something similar pretty recently with Palworld, where they investigated Palworld and then later down the line launched their lawsuit, so it could happen, but from their statement it sounds like that's not what they're trying to do. Dear gamers, we'd like to address the Schedule 1 drug dealer simulator situation and share some facts. 1. There is no lawsuit. 2. It is not our intention to prevent Tyler Video Game Studio from selling or developing their game. 3. There's an investigation into the nature of similarities between the games since a preliminary legal analysis indicated there might have been an infringement. 4. The analysis and investigation were necessary in light of repeating opinions that the games are very similar. By not investigating it, Movie Games, being a publicly traded company, could face severe consequences for negligence. Let me just take a brief pause here. That one is really confusing to me because obviously there's going to be similarities between the games. They're in the same fucking genre. That's to be expected. There's nothing copyright infringing about sharing mechanics in the same genre. There's only so many things you can do to make fucking weed, right? But you're saying that repeating opinions are what drove you to this about how similar they are. How does that work when you filed this investigation the same day Schedule 1 launched? They filed this on March 24th, the launch day of Schedule 1. How many repeating opinions could there have possibly been? Like, it's not like this is something that had been simmering and bubbling over like speculation. Did Schedule 1 infringe upon Drug Dealer Simulator's copyright? Like, that wasn't a prevailing thought process. This happened immediately when Schedule 1 launched. My best guess is they're referring to their legal analysis that had this repeating opinion that they share a lot of suspicious similarities. But that doesn't really pass the smell test for me either, because there's other drug dealing games out there that I think share more in common with Drug Dealer Simulator than Schedule 1 does, and they didn't get hit with an investigation by Movie Games. And another thing that really baffles me, why just Schedule 1? From what I've seen, I don't think Movie Games has gone after other drug dealing simulator games, like Weed Shop, for example, a game near and dear to my boners. Weed Shop and Drug Dealer Simulator also share a lot in common. Like, a lot. They do. But Weed Shop didn't have Movie Games knocking on their door, taking a peek under the hood to make sure everything was, A-OK there with no infringements. And while I understand companies have to defend their copyright, otherwise they're going to lose it and it's a big problem for them, it's something I'm very well aware of. I've talked about it before. This doesn't really feel to me like a case of them doing that just for the sake of, doing their due diligence, making sure, no one tries to hit them for negligence, because they haven't done this for any of the other drug dealing games in the genre, like Weed Shop and other ones that do share similarities, a lot of similarities with Drug Dealer Simulator. It seems like it is specifically targeted at Schedule 1 and none of the others. Anyway though, to number 5, they said, the above was communicated only via SP, a stock market communication system where we are obligated to publish such information for full transparency. Not publishing it would also be a case of negligence. From there, it was picked up by media and in some cases wrongfully reported as a lawsuit. And then number 6. The above is handled only by Movie Games, the publisher, not Byte Runners, the developer of Drug Dealer Simulator. The developer is not involved in it whatsoever. There's no ill will towards Tyler. We even emailed them best wishes shortly before the release when the game was already huge, but before the investigation was deemed necessary. However, we are obligated to perform this investigation, act accordingly to the scope of the infringements if it's confirmed, and inform the public about it via SP. So, there's quite a bit I want to say here. So number 1, they're 100% right on. There is no lawsuit. They have not filed a lawsuit. It is an investigation. Could lead to a lawsuit if they choose to, and that's something they mentioned at the end. They might go down that path, or maybe they'll ask Tyler to change certain things about the game. Who's to say? But there is no lawsuit. That is correct. But my 2 cents, this really does feel like they are trying to find some wiggle room, some ground to stand on for action against Schedule 1 in some capacity. I think number 2, they're probably absolutely right about that. They're not trying to have it, get taken down or have Tyler not be able to sell it or anything. Probably not going that route. I think they're trying to look for some kind of middle ground of you change these things or you infringed upon this copyright, so here's, a price you'll have to pay for that. So something in that realm is more what I think the goal is, because this doesn't feel like just normal routine, business as usual here because they haven't done it for other drug dealing games that share plenty of similarities with Drug Dealer Simulator. But what I really want to make a mention of here is that the tone of this is far more friendly than the investigation seems. Like, this seems like they're trying to just, hey, we love Tyler and what he's done with Schedule 1. We just had to investigate because we're a publicly traded company and we want to make sure everyone knows that we're doing our due diligence. There's no negligence here. We're making sure it's just, some coinky-dinks. We're in the same genre. It's just going to be a couple of little similarities, but nothing infringing or anything. Like, that's kind of how it comes across here. But in the investigation, they have kind of a different tone to it. Instead of saying, like, we're just checking things out to make sure, they explicitly use the word identified. In 2 instances that I can find on the investigation report, there has been a mention of they identified unfair acts of competition, and that they have identified several elements that were used that infringed on their copyrights, like in story, mechanics, and UI. That's very different than just saying, hey, we're just checking things out. Hey, we're just doing a little perusal here. Maybe it's a mistranslation. I think that's definitely possible here from the initial reports. But when you say things like you have identified the unfair acts of competition, you have identified several elements that were protected by copyright, that's already saying you have found things that you believe there is an issue with. And now you are investigating further in case there's more, or to analyze the extent of it. Whereas in the statement, they portray it as though this is just something they need to do as a publicly traded company because there's similarities and they want to ensure there's no copyright infringement. They talk about how there may be copyright infringement, so they just needed to check and make sure. Whereas in the investigation report, they do explicitly say that they identified the usage of several things that were protected by copyright. So, to me, that's just a little contradictory. I think that conflicts a little bit there. Now, again, it could be a mistranslation. I do think that's definitely possible. We'll have to wait and see what shakes out from all of this. But there just is a difference to them saying, oh, we just do this because these games are really similar, we want to make sure everything's okay, versus we identified things that are not okay, and now we're investigating further. Those are just 2 very different things in my eyes. Now, as I mentioned, the developers behind the game also came forward. They said, in light of the recent Movie Games vs. Schedule 1 legal investigation controversy, I would like to state that we, Byte Runners, the development studio behind Drug Dealer Simulator series, do not have any ill intentions towards neither Schedule 1, Tyler, or the game community. Actions taken by our publisher, Movie Games, are part of their internal policy and business interest, which we have no influence over. We were not informed about their plans and are also surprised by this course of action. We are currently in talks with Movie Games on the matter. For now, we do not want to publicly neither condone nor approve the actions before these talks come to any conclusions. And then they go on to congratulate Tyler for the success of Schedule 1 and mentions that they want everyone to just support whatever game they choose and want to make their game the best it can possibly be. Byte Runners themselves obviously had no hand in any of this. This was solely a decision made by Movie Games, and Byte Runner comes out to confirm that and even mentions that they were just as surprised as everyone else was with this action that Movie Games has taken here. Now, I saw some people upset that they didn't fully come out with, the iron fist and say this was really bad for Movie Games, but I understand it's a very tricky situation for them to be in because that's their publisher. They can't just bite the hand that feeds them like that and potentially just lose their studio like that. That's not something that any developer can reasonably do. So I think that's a very unfair criticism of Byte Runners. I think this statement is totally fine. And there's something in here that I find very interesting about how this all unfolded. Byte Runners said they were just as surprised as everyone else, meaning Movie Games must not have consulted any of the developers about this copyright infringement that they believe was potentially happening. How the fuck would the publisher pursue this without even consulting the developers of the title? It's not like they were in the lab fucking coding it themselves, making the game. How could they possibly say that something was potentially stolen from them or toes were stepped on in regards to their copyright with Schedule 1 without ever even talking to your own developers about it? That feels so weird to me. I don't know if that's weird to anyone else, but I thought that just sounded really backwards. Now, I did reach out to both Bite Runners as well as Movie Games to ask more specifics about what they think could even potentially be a copyright infringement between these two titles, and why this action would be taken against Schedule 1 but no other drug dealer simulator game, because I truly can't wrap my noodle around what could possibly be a copyright infringement here in the first place. Drug Dealer Simulator was not the only drug dealing sim game on the market. There's a handful of them. There's nothing super unique about that concept. There's nothing there that I believe is exclusive to just Movie Games property that no other game can ever use without stealing from them. Like, it's not like Spider-Man, for example, right? It's not like Tyler made a Spider-Man ripoff where instead of slinging webs from his hands, he's slinging webs from his feet. Then you've clearly got yourself an issue there. Here, it's similar mechanics, sure, because it's the same genre. There's only so many ways you can be making these drugs and distributing them on the street, using a phone to contact people. Like, all of these things are, of course, going to be similar. So I'm just so curious to hear from them what specifics they're even looking at in regards to a potential copyright infringement. I just don't get it, because I don't think it should have ever even come to this in the first place. Maybe it's all a huge misunderstanding, but I still just don't even see why the investigation would be led underway in the first place, stating that they've identified, copyright infringing uses of story mechanics and UI. Like, that, to me, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm hoping to get some answers from them soon, and I'll let you all know if I do. Anyway, I wanted to just give you an update to this. That's really about it. See ya.
If you're standing up, you're going to want to take a seat, because I've got a doozy for you today. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, it'd be great if anime was real. Our world is so boring. And I can even sympathize with that a bit. I think it'd be great to scream really loud and get huge muscles and grow taller. But then you need to take a step back and read a headline like this and realize that we're already living in an anime. And it's a goddamn shonen shithole. There's a Destiny YouTuber who's currently being sued by Bungie for $7.6 million. And just like the Celtics in the NBA Finals, he will absolutely lose. He doesn't stand a chance. He'd have better luck finding $7.6 million in the gutter than winning this lawsuit against Bungie. This guy took the plot of Death Note and applied it to YouTube. He basically became a Diet Kira, and as a result, it cost him his entire life here with this lawsuit. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've loosely followed this story since it broke a couple months ago, and my god, there's so many twists and turns in here, it makes Game of Thrones look tame. It is so unbelievably goofy. And you all know how much I love the goofy and the wacky, and my god, I'm ashamed to say it, but even the silly too. And this story is absolutely among the cream of the crop in that ballpark. So, let me break all of it down for you. A couple months ago, Destiny content creators had their judgment day. Rapture had occurred. In total, 96 videos just vanished from a multitude of Destiny content creators seemingly out of nowhere, and for no reason. The videos were totally innocent, there was nothing wrong with them, but they had all been struck down by a company called CSC, which is a legitimate copyright management firm that represents Bungie. So, content creators rightfully were very upset with Bungie, thinking that they'd betrayed the community. Bungie had decided to go to war against the creators, and it was this big bloodbath online for a while of people hating Bungie for what they did. But it turns out Bungie was also a victim. Their own videos got copyright struck and taken down by the same CSC agency. So what went wrong? Did an employee go rogue? Just have a Winter Soldier moment and just go full nuclear and take all Destiny content down as they saw fit? Well, as it turns out, there was a bad actor impersonating CSC Global. And they were the puppet master behind the scenes taking down all of these videos. So it naturally became the question of who is doing it and why, because Bungie also put out a statement saying they're affected and they're investigating because this is not okay. Bungie wouldn't do this, it's not them. They were as confused as the rest of the community. But they weren't just confused, they were furious. They went fucking berserk. They weren't just mad at this douchebag that was copyright striking everyone with these fraudulent takedown requests. They were mad at YouTube. They took YouTube to court in order to get Google to finally reveal the identity of the person behind this, because YouTube was putting up a big stink about it. They even had the same problems as normal YouTubers, saying Bungie went through customer service and didn't get the issue solved for days. They even said that YouTube support didn't even respond to them in a timely fashion, if at all. Reading this when it was happening was shocking, because even a billion-dollar company like Bungie has to go through the same channels as the fucking goobers like me and all other YouTubers do. And it sucks. It's trash. Bungie got a taste of what it's like to be a normal YouTuber for a little bit. You get no answers, you get no response, and you get no solutions when you go up to like the top of the food chain of YouTube. They would have had better luck just doing what all the rest of us do and start whining on Twitter about it and crying for YouTube's attention, because it seems like the only team there that can actually solve things is the Team YouTube Twitter account. So instead of like going through the court as well as the support channels, Bungie should have just went right to Twitter with a twitlonger or some shit and a trending hashtag, because it seems like it's all they'll respond to. They won't even respond to a billion-dollar company through their official channels. What a joke. What chance do any normal YouTubers have if Bungie, of all companies, can't get them to talk to them? It's laughable. They slammed YouTube's absolutely archaic and dog shit system here with a fully detailed outline of how it happened and how weak YouTube's system is, and then finished it off by leaving YouTube a 1-star Yelp review on their support process, saying that Bungie was stranded in a circular loop. When I read that circular loop line, it was like this eureka moment. A light bulb flicked on in my head, and I knew exactly what happened here. Bungie, being as naive as they were about YouTube, thinking that good systems were in place, went on their YouTube channel and went to the partner creator support line, which lets you talk to what's supposed to be support agents at YouTube. But they're basically just bots. I don't think that there's anyone using that with a pulse. And what happens when you try and talk to people through that is they just keep linking you frequently asked questions, or they just keep asking you the same question you've answered a million times, and you just go in a circle forever, like Ouroboros constantly eating its own tail. Nothing gets solved when you contact that line. It's only frequently asked questions or publicly accessible YouTube blog posts about what might be adjacent to your issue, or repeated questions ad nauseum forever. I knew exactly what happened once I read Circular Loop. So Bungie couldn't even get in contact with YouTube directly initially, it seems. They went to that boilerplate, terrible service of the support line. But it looks like they did finally get it solved because they got the person's identity. And the story behind this is so stupid, it's crazy. There was a disgruntled Destiny YouTuber named Lord Nazo, or Nick. And Nick's YouTube channel focused on directly ripping music from Destiny's Taken King and Witch Queen official soundtracks and uploading them to his personal YouTube channel. And despite repeated takedown notices, Nick decided to leave the music up, which eventually resulted in him losing the account. And he got mad. Nick got very upset at this. This happened months prior to him impersonating CSC Global. So something snapped in Nick here, and he wanted revenge. And then he thought back to the time he watched Death Note, and he's like, maybe I could do that. So he impersonated a CSC Global employee and started filing takedown requests, fraudulent takedown requests, on pretty much anyone who made Destiny content. Just kept writing their name in the Death Note. Just another one chalked up on the board, another victim, another body left in the wake of Nick's rage and his quest for revenge. And just like when L teamed up with Kira, Lord Nazo was directly trying to hunt himself down in secret. So he was on the front lines communicating with the content creators that he was actively striking, pretending to be on their side, and pretending to help try and find this fraudster that was issuing the takedowns. So he deceived all of them into thinking that he was there to help them, like Scooby-Doo, trying to sniff out the actual criminal here in this mystery. Meanwhile, he was the one actively doing it. It's so goofy. He'd send messages like this here, some of the silliest shit. Yeah, it's the people like us who suffer, the little guys, or just anyone with fewer than 250k YouTube subscribers and 100k Twitter followers. This was absolutely a plan to put himself at the bottom of the list of potential suspects. So he'd say things like, yeah, I was also a victim of this a few months ago. There's something real evil out there, and we've got to find him. I won't rest until this dubious actor is brought to justice.
He'd go on, dropping breadcrumbs like it's definitely a fraud, and then even going into detail about how easy it is to take down someone's content using YouTube's broken system. Just constantly saying things like, it's actually a fraud out there and I know it. Just trying like his best to make it seem like he's super innocent and on their side. But unfortunately, it was all a ruse, and he was the one guilty of this crime. And for this crime, he is facing a $7.6 million lawsuit. That's a fat one. To my knowledge, that's the biggest lawsuit against any YouTuber so far. The previous record, I believe, was the $1.7 million against Roblox YouTuber Ruben. This is blowing that out of the water right now. And this is a lawsuit this guy would absolutely lose. He's guilty. Like he is literally like admitted to it. He has been caught red-handed with his hand in the cookie jar. They have absolutely caught him dead to rights on this charge. He did this. And it's pretty cut and dry. They got the information from YouTube. They even have these Discord screenshots where he like subtly hints at exactly how he's doing it. There's just no wiggle room here. So this is a lawsuit that he can't possibly win, really. And I've seen a lot of people defending him, saying like he was actually doing it just to make a point about how broken the system is. And that's a good point to make because the system is broken, but this is the worst way of doing it. He's committing crimes. This is a crime. And it's a really douchey one at that, because he is actively hurting the livelihood of all of his peers. All 96 of those videos that he copyright struck were either friends of his, mutuals, or Destiny content creators that rely on content creation for their livelihood, and he threatened it, directly threatened it. That's not necessarily a petty crime. That's a big deal. And that's a wide-stretching one that affects a lot of people. So I think he absolutely deserves to be slapped like this and made an example out of. Shit like this isn't okay. YouTube actually slapped someone like this in a similar fashion back in like 2019. There was a guy issuing fraudulent takedowns for other content. I think it was Minecraft. And he got slapped with $25,000 per takedown notice. And you know what happened? That shit didn't happen again because they made an example out of that guy. And that's exactly what Bungie's doing with Nick, Lord Nazo, here. And I think it's the right play. Bungie's seeking $150,000 for each of the works implicated in the fraudulent takedowns for a total of $7.65 million, and plus the legal fees. And just last week, they won a settlement of twice that in a dispute with a Destiny 2 cheat seller. So Bungie's already riding momentum here. They already copped a previous W here, and it looks like they might get another one if this makes it to court. And all of this over Miner's YouTube channel, which had less than 3,000 subs. Ultimately, I think Lord Nazo wanted to do something good. Like, he truly believed he was the hero in this anime, where he's fighting against a mega corporation that wrongfully took down his content, and he wanted to make an example out of a broken system. But he failed to realize that he was never the hero to begin with, because his content was straight rips from their official soundtrack that he re-uploaded, fully knowing that that's not allowed, and even receiving warning that that's not allowed, and still acted surprised and angry when he eventually lost his channel because of it. And then in his temper tantrum, tried to spin this narrative where like, this system's broken and I'll prove it, by targeting the company that made me mad. And by targeting that company, he targeted a ton of normal people that had nothing to do with Bungie. And as a result of that, their livelihoods got kind of fucked for a little bit. Bungie's reputation got fucked for a while, and a lot of the other music uploaders who actually do have permission and uploaded music fully within fair use policies, they took down their content in order to avoid being struck because they thought it was Bungie just going on a killing spree. So they panicked and removed all of that content from their own channels, which again hurt their livelihood and still does because the content's not back up since they deleted it. And that now is off YouTube. All of that content's gone as a result of this guy going commando mode. So the results of all of this were overwhelmingly negative across the board. There was nothing good here for anyone. And most of all, the worst part of it happened to Nick himself, now facing a life-changing lawsuit of $7.6 million. A really fucking crazy story, honestly, with a twist ending that I didn't expect. When I was first reading about this, I thought it'd be like a group of people doing a coordinated effort against Bungie that they had like a disagreement with. I didn't think it would be a single person that just had a petty disagreement with the company. It's just absolutely mind-blowing stuff. So I just wanted to share this because I thought it was pretty crazy and pretty sad at the same time, to be honest. And that's about it. See ya.
Yeah, I'm a filthy little greasy goblin today. Clearly I haven't showered yet, and maybe I won't shower today. That's the beauty of being an adult. I get to make my own gross choices. But what I'm choosing to do before showering, at the very least, is talk about the most wild development in any drama situation I've seen so far. Across the entirety of my time on the internet, I haven't seen drama reach this climax before. I'll go ahead and speedrun the breakdown of the chess cheating drama that's been going on for over a month now. I've been following it since the Genesis. It has been a non-stop, action-packed, wild and wacky ride straight into fucking drama Valhalla. It has been the gift that just keeps on giving. The carved wood drama is unlike anything I've seen before. It all started when Hans Niemann played Magnus Carlsen at a tournament. Hans Niemann beat Magnus Carlsen, which was a surprise to the entire chess world since Magnus Carlsen is the best. And then Magnus Carlsen made a loose accusation of cheating against him. The entire chess community then started accusing him of cheating against Magnus in order to win. That's when the anal bead cheating theory was hatched. Some people speculated he may have had Stockfish, a chess engine, stuffed into a small butt plug that he inserted into his asshole before the tournament, which fed him the correct moves. This was more or less just a meme theory, but a lot of people truly believed Hans Niemann was cheating. Eventually, it came out that Hans Niemann did actually cheat in online games. Hans Niemann even confessed openly to cheating in online games, but maintained his innocence in over-the-board physical chess matches. And then Chess.com came out with evidence against Hans Niemann that he has cheated in more online games than he initially let on, including online games for tournament money, and more than he had initially said to the community. And that's where the drama had stopped until today, where Hans Niemann published this lawsuit going after all of the people that have been very staunchly against him and hard accusing him of cheating. A $100 million lawsuit has just been filed by Hans Niemann against Magnus Carlsen, Magnus Carlsen's company, Play Magnus, Danny Wrench and Chess.com, and Hikaru Nakamura. A $100 million minimum lawsuit. Now, this is a defamation case. Hans alleges that all of the cheating accusations he's been slapped in the face with have had a detrimental impact on his career and his reputation, and also are hindering his future in the profession that he's dedicated so much time for, which is obviously true. I think there is somewhat of a real concern of being blacklisted from tournaments going forward just based off the reputation as a whole. But also, Magnus Carlsen said he refuses to play Hans Niemann. The last time the two met each other after this cheating scandal, Magnus Carlsen resigned after 2 moves. He just fucking rage quit. Man just fucking disconnected the Ethernet cord and left the Call of Duty lobby. He just outright immediately forfeited because he just refuses to play Hans Niemann, believing that he's a cheater. So this means that if a tournament wants to have Hans Niemann and Magnus Carlsen competing, they really can't. They'll have to choose one or the other, because if the two meet again, Magnus will likely just flip the board once again. So this could absolutely impede Hans Niemann's career going forward, as well as the opportunities and tournaments he can play for. Now again, I really do want to drive this home. While Hans Niemann has publicly confessed to cheating and Chess.com has publicly come out with more evidence to confirm his online cheating, he still 100% maintains he's never cheated in over-the-board chess, and as of this moment, there is still not concrete 100% confirmed proof that Hans Niemann has cheated in over-the-board chess or cheated against Magnus Carlsen. And we may never know if he did. You know, we can't go back in time and spread his butthole in front of the camera and check if there's anything there. We just don't have that ability to do that yet. Now, I do want to mention there have been studies run on Hans Niemann's performance, and some of them raise some concerns amongst the community. There also have been chess engine correlation reports run on Hans Niemann's games to see how many of his moves correlate to moves engines would make. But all of these, as I understand them, aren't definitive proof that he is cheating. So we just don't know for sure yet. Everyone's going to have different opinions on it, and it's just such a messy situation. And now we have this lawsuit to dissect. So, like I mentioned, he is suing some of the people that have been hard accusing him of cheating for at least $100 million. I'll go ahead and stand up in front of the class and read it out loud. Accordingly, Niemann is entitled to a money judgment against defendants in an amount to be determined at trial, but not less than $100 million, including compensatory, consequential, and punitive damages. So this is where the at least 100 million comes from. It looks like, you know, he's not going to settle for anything shy of 100 million. He won't even get out of bed for anything below 9 figures here. which seems like a lot right away. I bet you could add every single chess player's winnings for the last 100 years together and it wouldn't even come close to 100 mil. So this number is shooting for the stars here. And just for reference, here's the top 10 all-time prize money winners. They're not even breaking 10 mil. So it really seems like that number is way out of proportion here. Hans Niemann could play chess professionally for the next 1,000 years and never even come close to earning $100 million. So those damages seem outrageous, but I'm not a lawyer, and from what I understand, this is very normal in defamation cases where they just put an absolutely astronomical number there just to try and get as much juice for the squeeze as possible and make it like as big and scary and intimidating as it can be. I don't think they're actually hoping to get that much. Wherefore, Niemann hereby requests that the court grant the following relief. On the first cause of action, money judgment in favor of Niemann against defendants, the specific amount of which to be determined at trial, but not less than 100 million plus pre-judgment interest. And then B, second cause of action, same thing, no less than 100 mil plus pre-judgment interest. Point C, third cause of action in favor of Niemann, not less than 100 million plus pre-judgment interest. Point D is a little bit different. Money judgment in favor of Niemann against defendant, specific amount of which to be determined at trial plus pre-judgment interest. This doesn't have 100 million listed there for some reason, but it's the exact same wording. And then point E, fifth cause of action, no less than 100 mil. Now, this is where my little reptile brain started to malfunction and overheat here, because it looks to me like it's 4 separate asks of 100 million each, which would be a $400 million total. And that's how a lot of other people interpreted it as well. But after doing a little more research and seeing what a lot of lawyers are saying about it, it appears that these 4 things that list 100 mil as like the damage is if any of these 4 are found to be truthful, then any one of them should amount to 100 million in relief to Hans. At least that's how some of the lawyers have broke it down. Basically, the reason it's there 4 times is if any of these are found true, then it should be 100 mil, and it's not going to stack. So if multiple are found true, it'll still just be 100 mil. It's not like additional or anything like that. So I'm going to run with that because that's what makes the most sense to me. Once it was explained, I don't know if I'm doing it justice and explaining it to you guys, but it looks like the total is 100 million, not 400. Either way, though, that is still a super duper high amount to be suing for here. Now, after reading and watching some lawyers break this down, most of them were giving their perspective on whether or not this is even like a winnable case in any capacity for Hans Niemann, because there are some sections of this lawsuit that are just downright weak that they point out, but also some of it just reads like an angry blog post from like a salty soccer mom in a couple places. Like there's a whole section where they just put in parentheses king of chess when referring to Magnus Carlsen and talking about him being a coward or a sore loser who couldn't accept losing to Hans Niemann. So things like that stood out to me as like, wow, that doesn't sound professional. I wouldn't expect to see that kind of language in a lawsuit. But the lawyers were more focused on whether or not this was a legitimately winnable case. And most of them agree that the lawsuit does actually have some bite to it, but not all of it. So Hikaru Nakamura being listed here seems like that's completely a lost cause. They were kind of scratching their head on that one because in order for Hans Niemann to win against Hikaru, he'd have to prove that Hikaru knew Hans wasn't cheating, knew the evidence wasn't legitimate evidence, and then still accused him of cheating anyway. Which of course sounds impossible to prove. But his claims against the Magnus Carlsen and Play Magnus as well as Chess.com, most of them were saying there is a chance for Hans Niemann to squeak out a victory here because there isn't actual evidence to prove he's cheated at the moment. So it would all come down to discovery. Most of them were saying discovery will be like the actual deciding factor in how this case goes because they're going to need to prove that they have real evidence that Hans is cheating in over-the-board chess, at least according to some of the lawyers I've watched. Otherwise, Hans Niemann does have a case against them for the defamatory statements of cheating and the accusations and implying that he's cheating because it's such a reputationally damaging thing that impedes his ability to compete further. Overall, though, what a crazy development in this whole chess cheating scandal drama. We started from anal beads and now look at us. Yeah, this shit is just going insano style. So yeah, just wanted to drop that hot plate of spaghetti and meatballs on the table for you here because, wow, that's really about it. See ya.